I'm going to be 28 with an 8-year-old.
You were 20 when you had Stormy?
I was 19 when I got pregnant.
Imagine being 17 years old. You're one of the most watched teenagers on the planet. Hundreds of millions of people follow your every move. And you're sitting alone with a secret so big, so terrifying, that you can't tell a single soul. Not your mom, not your sisters, not anyone. Now, imagine that secret eventually becoming one of the most talked about moments in modern celebrity history. That's where we're starting today. Because Kylie Jenner didn't just hide a pregnancy, she hid the fear of one. And the story of why she did that, how she did that, and what it reveals about growing up inside the most famous family in the world, that story is so much deeper than the headlines ever gave it credit for. And by the end of this video, I promise you, you're going to see the whole thing differently. Stay with me, because there's a twist coming that most people completely missed. Let's lay the groundwork first, because context is everything here. Kylie Kristen Jenner, born August 10th, 1997, the youngest child of Kris and Caitlyn Jenner, half-sister to Kim, Kourtney, and Khloe Kardashian, full sister to Kendall Jenner, and from the time she could walk, she was on camera. Keeping Up with the Kardashians premiered in 2007. Kylie was 9 years old. 9. By the time she hit her teenage years, she wasn't just a kid growing up. She was a kid growing up on a reality show, in front of an audience that felt entitled to every piece of her life. So when the first whispers about a possible Kylie pregnancy started circulating in 2017, the world reacted the way the internet always does, with obsession, speculation, and zero regard for the fact that there was an actual human being at the center of it all. Now, here's the key fact that anchors everything. In multiple interviews and on the family's Hulu series The Kardashians, Kylie has opened up, in pieces over time, about what it was actually like to suspect she might be pregnant before she was ready, before she had a stable relationship, and before she had the courage to tell her own parents. She described the fear as consuming, paralyzing, and she kept it entirely to herself. That admission, that she hid not just the pregnancy but the fear, is what cracked the whole story open. Because it tells us something about this family, about this industry, and about what it costs to be famous before you're fully formed as a person. Let's get into it. To understand why Kylie hid anything, you have to understand what her baseline reality looked like. Most teenagers get to be messy in private. They get to make mistakes, figure out their bodies, navigate relationships, all behind closed doors. Kylie Jenner did not have that luxury. By the time she was 15, she had millions of Instagram followers. By 16, she was being photographed every time she left the house. By 17, her lips had become a global news story. The Kylie Jenner lip challenge went viral worldwide, and suddenly her physical body was a topic of public debate, dissection, and mockery. Let that sink in. 17 years old, and her body was already public property in the court of internet opinion. She was also navigating her first serious relationship with Tyga, a rapper nearly a decade older than her, which brought its own wave of public scrutiny, criticism, and commentary that no teenager should ever have to absorb. So when Kylie began to suspect she might be pregnant, and the timeline here matters, so hold on to it, her first instinct wasn't to call her mom. It wasn't to lean on her sisters. It was to go completely silent. And here's the first thing that nobody talks about enough. That silence wasn't selfishness. It wasn't immaturity. It was survival. When every reaction you've ever had has been filmed, replayed, analyzed, and turned into content, silence becomes the only thing that's
Hi,
truly
it's
yours.
Kendall and Kylie Jenner.
But here's what
Welcome
happened
to our
next,
new
and
YouTube
this
channel,
is where the
Keeping Up
story
with
gets
Kendall and
complicated. Kris Jenner is not just a mother. She is, by her own description, a momager. She manages her children's careers. She has financial stakes in their brands. She has navigated the public narratives of her family for decades with a level of precision that boardroom executives would envy. And Kylie, the youngest, the quietest, the one who'd always been slightly in Kendall's shadow, knew that telling her mother anything meant telling the machine. That's the tension at the heart of Chapter 1. Not a teenager hiding something from her parents out of fear of punishment. A teenager hiding something because she lived inside a system where personal moments had a way of becoming professional content. And that changes everything about how you read what comes next. Let's talk about 2017, specifically the second half of 2017, because that is when something remarkable happened. Kylie Jenner, one of the most publicly visible young women on the planet, essentially vanished. She pulled back from public appearances, she went quiet on social media in a way that was noticeable even by normal standards, let alone for someone whose entire brand was built on constant digital presence. And the internet, being the internet, immediately started talking. The pregnancy rumors exploded, and for months, neither Kylie nor anyone in her family confirmed or denied a single thing. Now, in retrospect, we know what was happening. Kylie was pregnant with her daughter Stormy Webster, who was born on February 1st, 2018. Her relationship with Travis Scott had moved fast, the pregnancy was real, and she had made the decision to protect it completely from public consumption for as long as humanly possible. But here's what she revealed later that changes the emotional texture of that whole period. She didn't just hide the pregnancy from the public. In the early stages, in those first terrifying weeks when she wasn't even sure what was happening, she hid the fear from her family too. She sat with the possibility alone. She processed it alone. She didn't run to Kris. She didn't call Kim. She didn't text Chloe. She sat with it, by herself, as a teenager. And when she finally did open up, first to Travis, then gradually to family, the reaction from her inner circle was, by all accounts, supportive. But the fact that her first instinct had been secrecy tells you something about the environment she'd grown up in. Source: in a 2022 episode of The Kardashians on Hulu, Kylie spoke candidly about the anxiety surrounding her second pregnancy and referenced how differently she felt compared to when she first hid her fears about her first. The contrast she drew was striking. But wait, because there's a layer here that gets overlooked every time this story gets covered. The fear Kylie was hiding wasn't just, I'm scared to be a mom. It was layered. It was, I am scared, I am not ready, I don't know how to exist in this moment without it becoming a story, and I don't fully trust that telling my family means telling only my family. That is an extraordinary weight for any person, let alone a 20-year-old, let alone one who had been on television since she was 9. February 2018. Stormy Webster arrives, and Kylie drops the video. If you haven't seen it, and even if you have, go back and watch it.
This is our
It's
first
an
video of
11-minute
many, and I
mini
hope you guys stay
documentary
tuned
about
and
her
watch.
pregnancy, her journey, her decision to stay private. It broke records. It became the most liked non-music video on YouTube at the time. It got over 50 million views in its first 24 hours. The internet, which had spent 9 months being frustrated by the silence, turned on a dime. Suddenly the secrecy wasn't suspicious. It was romantic. It was brave. It was, in the language of the stan community, iconic behavior. But here's the twist most people missed in that moment. The video was beautiful. It was emotional. It was clearly genuine. But it was also, and there's no way around this, a masterclass in narrative control. The woman who had grown up inside a content machine had learned, by sheer necessity, how to run her own version of one. She didn't give the story to the paparazzi. She didn't let it leak through a source. She released it on her own terms, in her own format, and the world rewarded her for it with one of the biggest viral moments of the decade. Now, was that strategic? Absolutely. Was it also emotionally authentic? Also absolutely. And that's the complexity of Kylie Jenner that the hot takes always flatten. It can be both real and calculated. It can be genuinely vulnerable and also brilliantly managed. These things are not mutually exclusive when you've been raised in this specific ecosystem. But here's what happened next, and this is the turning point that leads us directly to the admission we're really here to talk about. After Stormy, something shifted in Kylie, publicly and privately. Motherhood changed her relationship with the idea of privacy. It gave her, for the first time, something that truly belonged only to her, and that made her more willing, gradually, carefully, to talk about the harder parts of the story, including the fear she'd kept locked away. Fast forward to more recent years. Kylie, now a mother of 2, Stormy and her son Ire, born in 2022, has become progressively more candid about her inner life than she ever was as a teenager. In various interviews and on-camera moments, she has addressed the pregnancy secrecy not just as a logistical decision, but as an emotional one, rooted in fear. She talked about not being ready to say the words out loud, because saying them would make them real. She talked about the specific terror of being in a world where her private moments had historically become public spectacles. And she admitted, and this is the line that hit people, that she had hidden the fear from her parents before she'd even confirmed anything. that the first chapter of the story, the part before any announcement or decision, was hers alone. Not Kris's, not Travis's, hers. Now, people heard that and had very different reactions. Some heard vulnerability. Some heard a young woman protecting herself in the only way she knew how. Some heard, underneath it all, a quiet indictment of what it means to grow up Kardashian Jenner, where even your most intimate moments are potentially content. And some people, a smaller but vocal group, heard something else entirely. They heard a teenager who didn't feel safe enough to go to her own parents. And that question, was Kylie safe to be vulnerable with her family, is where the internet really started to fracture. Because Kris Jenner has always presented the family as a tight unit, a team, a circle of trust. And Kylie's admission poked a very small but very real hole in that image. Not because Kris is a villain, she's not, and we're not going to frame her that way, but because the structure of that family, the professional overlay on everything personal, creates a specific kind of emotional distance that Kylie herself has hinted at more than once. And that, right there, is the real story. Now, let's get into the analysis, because this is where it gets genuinely interesting. When Kylie's admission started circulating properly across TikTok, Twitter, celebrity news outlets, the reaction was almost perfectly divided. One half of the internet immediately rushed to empathy. The comments were full of people sharing their own stories of hiding pregnancy fears, of feeling like they couldn't tell their parents, of navigating that specific terror alone. Kylie's admission resonated because it was deeply human in a way that most of her content isn't. She wasn't selling something, she wasn't launching a product. She was just, for a moment, a young woman describing a scared, private experience. The other half of the internet did what the internet does. They connected dots. They pointed to the managed nature of the Kardashian media machine and questioned whether even this vulnerability was, on some level, strategic. Whether the timing of these admissions, always carefully placed in a Hulu episode or a press cycle, undermines their authenticity. And here's the provocative question I want to leave you with on this one. If genuine emotion is expressed through a professionally produced platform, does that make it less genuine? Or does it just mean that this is what authenticity looks like when you've never had any other kind? Take 2. Brand and career impact. Let's talk about Kylie Cosmetics. Let's talk about Kylie Skin. Let's talk about the fact that Forbes once called her a self-made billionaire, a claim that sparked its own controversy, and that her personal brand is worth hundreds of millions of dollars, regardless of what exact number you put on it. Here's the thing about Kylie's brand that people underestimate. It has always been built on intimacy. The lip kits sold because she made you feel like you were in on a secret with her. The tutorials worked because she made you feel like a friend, not a customer. Her entire commercial identity is constructed around the feeling of closeness and access.
Hi, it's Kendall and Kylie Jenner.
To vulnerability,
Welcome to our new
fear,
YouTube channel,
to hiding,
Keeping Up with Kendall.
to being privately terrified in a moment the public never saw. It doesn't hurt the brand. It feeds it. It deepens the illusion of intimacy that the brand runs on. Except, and here's the complication, it might not be entirely an illusion. The fear was real. The hiding was real. The admission is real. And somewhere in that tangle of authentic emotion and commercial packaging is a person trying to figure out where one ends and the other begins. The provocative question here? At what point does monetized vulnerability stop being vulnerability at all? Take 3. The PR and industry angle. From a pure PR perspective, the Kylie pregnancy secrecy story is a masterclass that communications professionals still reference. Think about what she did. She took a narrative that could have been chaotic, leaked photos, speculation, tabloid frenzy, and she compressed it into a single controlled release. One video, her platform, her edit, her timing. In an era where celebrity news cycles move at the speed of a tweet, she held an enormous secret for 9 months. 9 months, without a single confirmed leak from within her inner circle. That requires either an extraordinary level of loyalty from the people around her, an extraordinary level of fear about the consequences of leaking, or both. Rumor has it that the NDA culture within the Kardashian-Jenner orbit is exceptionally rigorous, and that anyone who enters that world, professionally or personally, understands very clearly what the expectations around discretion are. The industry implication here is significant. Kylie proved that a celebrity could still fully own a major personal narrative in the age of social media. That template, hide everything, then release everything on your own terms has been replicated by multiple celebrities since. It changed how publicists think about pregnancy announcements specifically. The provocative question, if you can control a story this completely, what else is being controlled that we don't even know to ask about? Take 4. The wider cultural conversation. This is the one I really want to sit with for a moment. Kylie Jenner hiding her pregnancy fear from her parents is, at its core, a story about what happens when children are raised inside industries. There are child actors who talk about this. There are young athletes who talk about this. There are kids who grew up on social media who are starting to talk about this. The experience of having your childhood monetized, of having your emotions and your milestones and your struggles become content, it does something specific to your relationship with vulnerability. It makes you strategic about it. It makes you careful. It makes you hold things back not because you're dishonest, but because experience has taught you that openness has a cost. Kylie didn't hide her fear because she was bad at communicating. She hid it because she had spent her entire conscious life learning that what she shared became public. That lesson doesn't stop applying just because the person asking is your mom. And that, genuinely, is heartbreaking. Not in a way that requires us to pity her. She has resources and support systems most people could never dream of. But in a human way. In the way that makes you think about what we ask of young people when we put them on screens and call it
This is our
entertainment.
first video of many, and
The
I hope you
provocative
guys
question?
stay tuned and watch.
How many Kylie Jenners are out there right now? Kids on YouTube, kids on TikTok, kids on reality TV, learning the same lesson. And what do we owe them? All right, let's talk about what the internet actually said, because the social media reaction to this story is its own fascinating chapter. The pro side. Kylie's defenders, and they are legion, rallied hard around the emotional core of the story. The dominant narrative on TikTok, especially, was one of relatability. Teen moms, young women who'd hidden pregnancy scares, people who'd felt unable to go to their parents in vulnerable moments. They flooded the comments with solidarity. One widely shared response, paraphrased, went something like, "People forget she was literally a teenager. Not a celebrity teenager, a teenager who happened to also be a celebrity. The fear was real, and she handled it the way any scared kid would. Alone first." That sentiment got tens of thousands of likes and sparked its own thread. The hashtag pulling most of the sympathetic engagement was variations of something celebrating her as a mother and framing the secrecy as an act of self-protection rather than deception. The anti-side? The critics had a field day, and their argument, stripped down to its core, was this. You cannot spend years building a brand on radical transparency and then claim credit for private vulnerability. You cannot sell intimacy as a product and then ask people to treat your actual intimate moments as sacred. One particularly sharp paraphrased comment that circulated widely said something to the effect of, "The fact that even this got turned into a Hulu moment is the whole point. Nothing is real until it's been packaged." It's a harsh read, but it's not a stupid one. The hashtag on this side of the debate was more chaotic, a mixture of general Kardashian skeptic tags and broader conversations about celebrity authenticity in the streaming era. And then there's the middle ground, which is honestly where the most interesting commentary lives. The neutral camp basically said, both things can be true. She can have genuinely hidden something terrifying, and the revelation of that hiding can also be commercially timed. Humans contain multitudes, famous humans especially. One viral paraphrased comment from this camp read, "I don't think Kylie is lying. I also don't think Kylie is unaware of the effect this kind of admission has on her brand. I think she's a smart woman who figured out a long time ago how to be honest in ways that also work for her. That's not manipulation. That's survival." Honestly, that's the most accurate read in the entire discourse, and it's the one that gets the least airtime because it doesn't fit a clean narrative. Rumor has it, and again, this is pure speculation, that Kylie's increased candor in recent interviews is partly connected to a broader repositioning of her personal brand, away from pure aesthetics and towards something with more emotional depth, possibly ahead of a major project announcement or brand expansion. Speculation. Whether that's true or not, the timing of these admissions has not gone unnoticed in PR circles. So what happens next? What do we watch for? Let's get into it. The immediate thing to watch is how this admission lands in the longer arc of the Kardashian-Jenner family narrative. The Kardashians on Hulu is an ongoing series, and this kind of personal revelation, hiding fear from parents, navigating private terror in a public world, is exactly the emotional terrain the show has been mining more deeply in recent seasons. Expect this thread to be pulled further. There's also the question of Kylie's relationship with her own kids as they get older. Stormi is already 7, the age at which Kylie herself started being filmed. And Kylie has made multiple comments, carefully but clearly, about wanting to handle her children's public exposure differently than her own was handled. That tension between the industry she grew up in and the mother she wants to be is going to produce some genuinely compelling television and some genuinely important cultural conversations over the next several years. Watch also for how Kris Jenner responds publicly to the admission, if she does at all. Kris is famously skilled at absorbing potentially difficult narratives and reframing them as evidence of family strength. But the specific detail of Kylie hiding the fear from her is a nuance that Kris will need to address eventually, either in an interview or on camera, and how she navigates it will be telling. The bigger industry implication is this. Kylie's story is accelerating a conversation that the entertainment industry has been reluctant to have, about the long-term psychological cost of raising children inside content machines. In the wake of multiple child star narratives that have ended badly, and with a new generation of kids growing up on YouTube and TikTok, the Kylie admission lands in a very specific cultural moment. It's evidence. It's a data point in an argument that advocates for child performers and young influencers have been making for years. And it's going to matter more, not less, as that conversation gets louder. One more thing to watch. Kylie's second child, Air, was born in 2022, and his face was kept private for an extended period, a direct echo of the Stormi secrecy playbook, but applied even more deliberately. As Air gets older and the question of his public presence becomes active, Kylie's stated desire for privacy will be tested in real time. That storyline is just beginning. The stakes are high, not just for Kylie personally, but for what her choices model for an entire generation of young parents who grew up online and are now trying to figure out how to raise children in spaces that weren't designed with children's well-being as the priority. So let's bring it home. Here's what we covered today. Kylie Jenner, raised on camera, famous before she was formed, and navigating the most intimate moments of her young life inside a professional content ecosystem, hid her pregnancy fear
Hi,
not
it's
just
Kendall
from
and
the
Kylie
world,
Jenner.
but from her own
Welcome to our
parents.
new YouTube
And the
channel,
reason
Keeping Up
she
with
did
Kendall
it
and
tells us more about the industry she grew up in than it does about her as a person. She wasn't secretive because she was calculating. She was secretive because she had learned over years of lived experience that openness had consequences, that vulnerability became content, and that in a world where everything you share is eventually monetized, the only truly private thing you have is the thing you haven't said yet. That's the real story, and it's bigger than one pregnancy. It's bigger than one family. It's a mirror held up to an entire entertainment culture, and the question it's asking is, what are we doing to the children we put inside it? My bold prediction for 2026 and beyond, Kylie Jenner becomes one of the most prominent and credible voices in the conversation about children and media exposure. Not because she seeks that role deliberately, but because her story is too specific and too resonant to stay contained to celebrity gossip. She is going to be referenced in policy conversations, in documentaries, in academic work about growing up in the influencer era. The admission she made about hiding her fear is a small crack in a very large wall. And walls, once cracked, tend to keep going. Screenshot that. I'm calling it now. If you're Team Kylie, if you think she deserved more privacy, more protection, and more grace than she ever got, smash that like button. If this video made you think, subscribe for daily spills because we go this deep every single time. Drop your take in the comments. Do you think Kylie's vulnerability is real, strategic, or both? I genuinely want to know where you land on this one. And stick around for the next video, where I'm breaking down the full story of how the Kardashian-Jenner family turned reality television into a billion-dollar empire, and what the people closest to them say it actually cost. That one is going to hit different. See you there.